All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. I am Jack Allen. Today, I have the one and only, my friend, the odd man from the Oddcast. What's going on, dude?
Well, I couldn't be odder.
Love it. Love it, dude. Nice. Nice. How you been? How's the show? How's life? How's everything going?
Everything's going well. Just plodding along or prodding along. How do they say that? I don't know. One of the two.
Oh,
Same old same, man. Yeah, I'm starting a garden, so I'm going to try and do this
nice.
fruits and or vegetables and herbs type thing. And I've got a couple of fruit trees I planted last year. So,
Nice. What kind of fruit trees did you plant?
so I've got a or two pear trees and two plums. I was told
Nice.
that those were good to have and they work off of each other. And so we'll
Dude,
see.
you're gonna have to let me. So I tried to grow a lemon plant. Um, it was 5 years, dude. I had this thing like it moved with me. Like it got bugs and eventually it died though. So I hope you have better luck. But it was 5 years. It lasted. Never. It could have produced lemons like 2 of the summers, but it would get bugs. And yeah, but so fruit trees are like difficult, I'll be
Yeah.
interested to see. I think you have to like cover them in the winter, but maybe you don't because you're down south, so it's a little different.
Yeah. I didn't. So, and they're still alive, but yeah, the bugs we have a lot of deer here. And so the
Yeah.
deer love those leaves on those fruit trees. So that's one
Okay.
of the worst things for us.
Huh. I wonder if you have to like cover it. I don't know. So, and what did you buy? How big were they when you got them?
Not very big, probably 4 feet tall.
Okay. But they're like
So
established
yeah,
probably.
yeah.
Yeah. And do they already have fruit or not yet?
No, no. We'll see.
You're for the long haul, dude.
Right.
The
Yeah.
long game. I
Maybe a
love
couple of years from now.
it. Well, when you get one, you'll have to mail me one, dude. Try
You got it.
your natural plums, no pesticides, no all those other things they put in it.
Right. I bet the natural ones are very small compared to what we were
Oh, I
used to
bet.
seeing.
Dude, even the organic fruit, like sometimes I'll get the organic fruit and it goes bad quicker. I mean,
Yeah.
I started reading a long time ago. I think it's called Seeds of Deception. Oh, I don't know if
Yeah. I know what you're talking
by
about.
Michael or Jeffrey Smith, I think. And I had to put it down, but it was like he talked about how like they'll take like a gene from a fish that whatever this gene prevents the fish from I'm getting moldy, and they'll put that gene in the seed of an apple tree. So like these apples that you have, they're not real, they're not pure apples anymore. They've got genes from all these different from animals, from different plant. Like it is crazy what they've been able to do.
That is wild, man, because I was thinking about that yesterday. I was like, all these GMOs, I'm sure a lot of people have written about this, but like, we think about the pokes possibly a link to autism and these different
Mm.
things that we used to didn't have to worry about whatsoever. And then, but then all the GMO foods that could also be something too that's causing a lot of the allergies and stuff like that too. Because
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, I never knew of anyone who was allergic to anything, not even bees. I might have known one person. So
Yeah. Right.
I don't
Well, I'm
know.
sure your kid's school is like I remember my family, they said that like it was like a peanut free school. Like you could not bring peanuts in no matter what, you
Oh
know?
yeah, yeah,
And like that wasn't around. And I'm a little bit younger than you, but that didn't exist when I was in. And there were kids that had like very few, maybe like the runts of the litter had an allergy. I always joke that
right.
if you have allergies, you're a weak human. But yeah, yeah. I don't, it is crazy though. It is crazy.
Yeah, it is, man. My kid's old school. He hasn't been going to the new one long, but so it was like 4 or 5 months ago, and they were having a party, and so we sent. I can't remember what it was, but my wife bought this like huge pack of some kind of snacks,
Yeah.
and it didn't have peanuts in it, but I guess it was one of those where they had come in contact with peanuts. It probably said it on the box, and we didn't look. So my son said that the teacher said no one can have any of these, but she didn't
Wow.
send them back. So I'm like, she just kept them. It's like $30 worth of snacks. So
Dude.
He's kind of mad about
It's
that.
so sad. Like what happened? It's like we've just if our ancestors could see us now, dude, it would be like they would we would be less like they would pick a 5-year-old child over our skill set that we have. You know, like
They really would, man.
yeah,
It's so bad, so
we're
bad.
we're so weak, but anyway, so I know you did a show on George Soros, and before you, I there was like it was, you know, I bookmarked tweets that I like find interesting, and I'm gonna pull it up. Let me just hit share screen. Oh, here he goes. But I wouldn't have used this headline, but George Soros, the liberal Jew destroying America, is also a Jared Kushner business partner. So it's just funny that and it's an old article. It's like 4 years old, but I don't know who retweeted it, but I was like, huh, that's interesting that Kushner is business partners with George Soros when I'm pretty sure Donald Trump Jr. he'll tweet stuff about, doesn't he? I think he does.
Probably. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And it's just fun. Like, dude, your brother-in-law is in business with the guy, but and crazy headline. Maybe 2017 was a different time that they would go with that label. But anyway, so you've done a
Yeah,
lot of research on George Soros.
I'm surprised to see that tweet there, because that, only certain people can make that tweet now,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
very few.
Very
But
few.
like yeah, I've been hearing about George Soros ever since I got into politics, over 20 years ago now, but I never looked into him because I just kind of was like, well, I've heard everything. He's the devil incarnate, he's a Nazi and all that stuff. But I was like, I just want to look myself, because I bet there's more there than we've been told, because usually they just scratch the surface and pick a few talking points and stick with those for a long time. So I started looking into him because had done those shows. I'd done like 5 shows on Ukraine, and his name kept coming up in his different. The Open Society is his main NGO, but he has one there in Ukraine called the International Renaissance Foundation. And turns out he's been in Ukraine since '92, I believe. He's
There?
poured a lot of money into it.
Does he live there or no?
No, I
Okay.
think he actually lives here. If I'm not mistaken, I think he lives in New York, but he's
Oh,
probably
wow.
got multiple houses.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I saw that he'd given. I think at this point it's almost 200,000 to Ukraine. And then when this whole thing happened with Russia, the Open Society donated 25 million immediately to Ukraine and started asking others to donate. They said their goal was 100 million.
Mm.
And so I started looking, and I was like, wow, what's his deal with Ukraine? It can't just be because he just feels bad for the people.
Right.
Because the more I looked, like when the Soviet Union broke up, even before it broke up, he had started investing in companies there in the Soviet Union. And then when they broke up, it was like he just went in and bought a lot of things dirt cheap, because everything was falling apart and they were lucky to get anything out of their businesses and their properties. So, that's kind of his MO. He loves to go in and kind of reap the rewards after a disaster or while there's unrest or, those kinds of things.
Right.
So I was like, I bet that he is doing the same thing in Ukraine. I started looking up these different, like the Orange Revolution, I think was I get these mixed up. There's so many of these color revolutions now. I can't remember if the Orange Revolution was 2014 or 2004.
Yeah, Orange Revolution was 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he had been there even before that, the International Renaissance Foundation. Like they're always right there when these governments are overthrown. Like Kazakhstan was like 3-4 months ago, I think, the uprising in Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
He's got a Kazakhstan Open Society Foundation there.
I'm sure.
And yeah, and I started seeing like there was a overthrow of the Georgian government a few years ago. I forget which revolution that's called, but his group was there during that one. So it's just like time and time again, you see his organizations. And then I noticed that you would see the National Endowment for Democracy, which is supposedly non-governmental, but it's funded by tax dollars, and it's headed up by politicians for the most part. or people who've been in different presidential administrations. And so it works with the CIA. It's a CIA offshoot. And what I found out was, like, under Reagan, I may have mentioned this on the last show, but under Reagan, they invented this, created this National Endowment for Democracy, or NED, because of the Iran-Contra deal, because they were getting bad press for that. And so they're like, well, how can we come up with an organization that can do all the same things that we do, overthrow these governments, but not be called CIA? So they came up with National Endowment for Democracy, and then they put the International Republican Institute and the Democratic. I should have this. I'm sorry, I don't have my notes here with me.
Oh, you're
I'm trying to
fine,
pull
dude.
them up, but they're not.
It's no worries, dude.
Anyway, it's the Democratic. The Democratic International Institute, I believe. Anyway, the DNI. I think it's the Democratic National Institute. Anyway, they all work together, and they basically overthrow these governments. So, like, McCain was the head of the Republican one until he died. Then this Madeleine Albright that just died, she was the head of the Democratic one. And they've got tons of these big businesses that are backing them, that donate to them as well. So you see the Soros organization's always working with these guys. There's also another one called Freedom House, which is anything but freedom. and you also see, you said, the USAID Foundation.
I've
or whatever.
seen that one so many times. With, I think Barack Obama's mom was in Kenya working as an archaeologist for USAID. Is that possible?
It could be, because it could be somebody, like, they could have, from what I can understand, they're basically contractors, and they don't just give out aid. They actually, and a lot of times, they'll give out these millions of dollars worth of contracts to these huge corporations, like when there's a war, or the government's been overthrown. So it's basically a way to open up these countries to, to crony capitalism.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a real racket. So you got all these, Soros is always right there. And I think he knows how to play the game so well that our government works with him, because he can kind of get things done through his NGOs that they can't exactly get done. They can do some things, but, like, there are some people who can trace these organizations right back to the government. It doesn't take that much doing if you just know the names.
Dude, well,
so,
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I was just, when you said about George Soros and cleaning up after, like, overthrows. I mean, we saw that with the Bolsheviks when they overthrew Wall Street, came in like a bunch of locusts and ate everything up. That was probably why they wanted to open it up in the first place. And they did it after World War I Germany. The FDR was involved in some group that went in and bought just people that had nothing, lost everything. They sold anything that they came in and swooped in with, and they even made a company. I think that was AIC. I think American International Corporation. I could be in that, but I think that he created either that company or another one. FDR was like on the board, and that's all they did. Their stocks were like $30 a share in America, and only, the top 1% could afford them. They bought thousands of them, and they just killed it.
Nothing much changes, does it?
No. I didn't mean to interrupt you, though.
No, you didn't interrupt. Please ask any questions you can think of. I know that it says that the Open Society Foundation, main one, is in over 120 countries. So that's a lot, man, because just think of the influence he has, because he goes in and it's kind of like, I believe this is his philosophy in life. After doing this research on him, I think he's kind of like, he works under moral self-licensing, which I tweeted about this, but, like, you do something good to justify doing something bad. And I think that's his whole thing. Because, like, there's a famous 60 Minutes interview he did, I think, in the early 90s. And I'll play a few clips of it on the first show I did about him. And it's a really good interview. It's hard to believe that somebody could actually do a hard questioning type of interview, because you don't ever see that anymore, hardly.
Yeah, right.
Especially with somebody on his side of the aisle, politics. But the guy really busts his balls, and he gets all he stutters, and you can tell when he's kind of really trying to think things out to answer the questions correctly. But a lot of people called him a Nazi because he's Jewish, but he was there in I guess it was Austria during World War II,
Mhm.
and his dad, like he came from a very wealthy family. I think his dad
Okay.
was a lawyer, and I think he lived on some sort of island. But his dad realized what was happening with the Jews in World War II, so he gave his son George to this man, one of his friends, and he was non-Jewish, and he said to tell everyone that he is his son. So that's what he did, and that's how he escaped, or whatever. That's the story.
Interesting. Okay.
And yeah, and there's a book about his dad that I really want to read. Supposedly, he was a pretty interesting guy, but anyway, he went around with this so-called Godfather, or whatever you want to call him, and that guy would collect the belongings of Jews during World War II. So, and George had mentioned, I guess, in one of his books, he's written a ton of books, like 16 books or
Of
so.
course he has. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had mentioned that he had went along with him to collect those belongings. And the guy asked him, he said, did it bother you? Do you feel guilty? And he said, no guilt whatsoever. He was real blunt about that. And that's where everybody said he was a Nazi. And I'm like, well, I want to find out for myself. So, I looked and I was like, well, he's not really a Nazi. I mean, he was 14 years old when that happened.
Right.
Yet to say I have no guilt whatsoever, I thought was pretty bold. And he really seemed serious about it. And he said, well, it's kind of like the markets. If I wasn't there doing it, somebody else would. And the guy was kind of pressuring him about how he ran his business and how he got so wealthy. And he's like, well, I'm in a business where there is no moral values. There's no moral values meant to be in the investment business and in the business that I'm in. So I, don't worry about that. So I was just like, wow, that's like he's supposed to be the elite liberal,
Right.
you think liberal, you think George Soros, right? But then he's got that side that every liberal would say, that's a capitalist for you, that mindset. So it's like, just little things you can catch. Like there was one interview where he talked about how he liked to, he's like, there's rules in society, but I like to, make my own rules. I like to break the
Nice.
rules and make my own rules. So he has all these, investments all around the world, but he also has these offshore accounts. And the guy kind of busted his balls on that as well. And at one point, George Soros was saying, I'm for regulations because we need to be regulated, which, I agree to a degree
Mhm.
about that. But then he turned around and said, well, we have these offshore accounts. And the guy's like, well, are you trying to escape regulations? And he's like, yes. So it's kind of like Jekyll and Hyde,
Right. Well, it's interesting you said how he has like that caveat, like I do a good thing, I'll do a bad thing if that's the Illuminati's motto is what is it? By all or what's the motto, odd man? Oh my God. Does the means justify the end?
The ends justify. Yeah, yeah. The end
Yes.
justifies the means. I don't know.
Yes.
Now I'm mixed up.
Yeah. That's the saying, right? Jesus, the end justifies the means. Yes, that's the saying. So yeah, but that's fun. That was their motto.
Yeah,
So I think Adam
yeah.
Weishaupt said that. So
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny how a lot of the thinking behind a lot of these, different groups and different individuals go back to that same thinking of the Illuminati, which I keep saying I'm going to put in,
oh yeah, you said you were gonna do that.
I've even got like 30 minutes of it recorded, but then the whole Ukraine thing happened and I got so caught up in that. And I'm kind of like, I kind of wish I hadn't, because I don't really even see a clear good guy in that whole thing exactly. But
No.
I uncovered a lot of stuff that at least I thought was interesting.
Oh, dude, I'm sure you were one of the Ukraine experts because that's just. But it seems it's like taking, I don't know, a somewhat of a backseat. Ukraine, I'm talking about. It seems
Yeah.
like the news isn't. Well, I wanted to. Or do you have anything else you want to? I'm sure you could keep going on about Soros, but I will switch topics if you have any other big things to say or whatever.
No, nothing really. Just that everything that people say is pretty much true and easily provable. if you just, and I'll say this too. Shout out to the book. I've got it here somewhere. Where did I do with it? Oh, I didn't even know who Matt Palumbo was, and I guess he's
Oh, I've seen that book.
I guess he's a Bongino guy, but
Is he?
yeah, he's like, I guess he's co-wrote a couple books with him. So the reason I picked up the book is because there's no other books that really talk about the network. There's
Yeah.
people, there's books out there that talk about him, and they might mention a couple of his networks and all that, but this guy really goes into like a lot of the networks that he's involved in, and he also gets into the local elections, and he's really put a lot of money into local elections around the world. I mean, around the country, around the world too. But people should, if they're interested in it, that's a really good book.
Well, it's funny. We always talk about that, right? Like national politics, you're not going to make any difference. The only hope you have is changing local politics, which maybe the vote's a little more honest, all those things. And it's just funny that he also, if George Soros agrees, we are on the right track with saying that, because I think in Philly, I'm pretty sure like our DA, our like the Mayor Kenny, I think they're all Soros affiliated people. And dude, all they had, like, I mean, I was very lucky because of my crimes where I got nothing for them. But like in Philly, if you do a murder, you're looking at like 7 years. That's it. You
Wow.
drug crimes. Like there was people that would come into court. They like had a hard, like caught with tons of stuff. They would come in a tank top late. They would get nothing, dude, because this DA is so, and what you get is now Philly just hit like, last year at the high, like 700 murders, like 300 more than they did the previous years. But yeah,
It's crazy because I'll finish up here. Like especially like overseas, he really donates a lot of money to colleges overseas. Like he started Bard College. His ex-wife runs Bard College, and supposedly it's a big college. I don't know much about it, but I think it may be in New York. But he funds all these colleges around the world, and he funds a lot of times these like he funds Chatham House. He's got different, they're like the British CFR.
right.
They've got scholarships. That's mainly how he does it, and a lot of it's for these like LGBTQ things, or these like these racial, like like things that you can take. Like what's the new? Is it 1812? Is that the one that they're talking about? Like this new? I'm totally out of the loop here.
1619 project.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
You
I'm
were
terrible,
in the
dude.
right zone, but just wrong
Right.
numbers.
But yeah, but he funds those kinds of things mainly, and it has to be because you know those things really aren't to help people in their lives. How's that
No.
going to help you in your professional career? I think it's actually those kind of classes actually cause more division because they're teaching people to just hate somebody else without even knowing them, and that's really, it's culture. He's teaching, it's a way to really poison the culture. So
Yeah.
that's my opinion.
Dude, it's so powerful. I mean, every leader has recognized that if you can get the youth, and
Yeah.
you'll have the future. I think that's a butchered Lenin quote or somebody's quote that said
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it's just so
Molly
powerful.
Molly Cruz says that at the first of one of their songs. He
Do
who
they?
has the youth has the future.
Oh, so maybe they get inspired by Lenin or Hitler, somebody. But that's hilarious, dude. So since we're talking about Ukraine, I wanted
Yeah.
to, or well, we were talking about the rich people as well. So did you see Jeff Bezos's tweets recently?
No.
Oh, dude. All right. Here, let me put it up. So so how the Biden administration is talking about pay their fair share, blah, 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 blah. Well, Bezos, dude, who you would think would just play along, he killed. So his was, the quote was from like Joe Biden or whatever, one of the people in his administration, talking about how it doesn't require a huge leap to figure out why one of the wealthiest individuals on earth opposes an economic agenda for the middle class, fights inflation for the long haul, and adds historic deficit. He's basically just saying Amazon needs to pay their fair share. And he mentions
Yeah.
Amazon. And so Bezos says, look, a squirrel. This is the White House's statement about my recent tweets. They understandably want to muddy the topic. They know inflation hurts the neediest the most. but unions aren't causing the inflation, and neither are wealthy people. Also, remember the administration tried to add 3.5 trillion to federal spending. They failed, but if they succeeded, inflation would be even higher than it is today. And inflation is today at a 40-year high. So
Wow.
I know I read that fast, but
No, that's good.
yeah.
That's really
what's your
interesting.
opinion on that?
It's really interesting. Bezos is kind of like one of those. He came by wealth a little bit differently than the other, like the Rockefellers, like those legacy people
Mm-hmm.
who are all in the Rothschilds and all that, who are all in on this inclusive capitalism and just this crazy wokeness. So who knows? I mean, I don't want to say he's a good guy, but
No.
it's like it is kind of nice to hear somebody say, you're full of shit,
Well,
in around.
yeah, I was just shocked, dude. Like it seems like out of character for
Yeah.
a billionaire like Bezos to say, "Whoa, you're saying it's not like." I feel like they just accept that's part of the territory, like to be called like a conspiracy wet dream. They're just like, well, I got billions of dollars. They're usually slobs, so what does it matter? They like say what they want.
Well, his wife did take a good chunk of that.
That's
So,
true. That's true. That's true.
well,
Uh,
it's like it would be. I'm surprised that we don't hear this more. More of these really wealthy guys saying, the more you take, the more you waste to the government, because it's such a, they're giving 40 billion to Ukraine. They've given billions to Ukraine already. It's crazy, when the country is in the shape it's in. If we were like all, just up to our knees with money and everything was like great, it would be one thing, but like it's just insane to me.
oh, I don't know how. And I still like I drive around. I'm interested if you see this, but I see like some Ukraine signs in people's yards and windows, and I think that I would say it's probably like 5%. And I'm in like a pretty mixed area of like it's Republican, but it's probably it's like middle class where I'm around like it's called the main line. It's like all the elite, uh, you know, elite liberals kind of people that live in $1 million homes. But I was just
Mhm.
surprised that even like some of the houses, they're not great houses that they have that in their window. Like, how do you take that? How do you say, okay, yeah, let's give, I clearly I'm struggling. The economy isn't great, but yeah, let's send a 40 bill to some country that 90% of America could not point out to on a map.
It. I would love to talk to one of these people, honestly, and pick their brain. I would love to, like some of the liberals I used to know, I would love to hear their argument for it and why they think it should happen. Because, you know, I come out of that time when the liberals supposedly hated war, even if it would seem to be justified. And, you know, now I'm kind of more on that side of things because I see that it's a racket, but it's just it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I don't see how anyone could to make a good case for that and
Yeah.
be serious about it with our country in the shape it's in.
Well, dude, and I don't know I've been doing those episodes on the history of central banking, and it's been like so fascinating how each country over time, they've had high usury rates, and then like a Caesar like character will come in and oust them. It happens in England twice in like the 1100s and 1400s, and then these countries just have all of these years. Like England, as the example, had like 400 years of that's when they built those beautiful churches, the things that people say Tartaria made. They worked less time than they worked only, they had over 160 to 180 days off a year with festivals and parties. And this was just like the peasant class. They still could afford, they had meat almost every meal. They had clothes, all these things. They worked, half 50% of the year, the other 50% they chilled. And then slowly but surely we get tricked and they institute these usury rates. And it's just like it's just so sad. Like all of us are living enslaved in this debt-based economy, and no one can. They just want to, and I'm sure that's the goal, just to point it to the other side, to not blame whose really fault it is that we have inflation, that we have exorbitant amounts of debt in the 300 of trillions with all the liabilities that we have, be it like Medicare and stuff. it's just fascinating that we are continually tricked each time. I don't know where I was going with that point, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's like the national debt doesn't matter anymore. Even I don't even see Republicans. Maybe they do, but I just haven't seen them make a huge issue out of that. Aren't we like 30 some odd trillion now? 32.
34. Yeah. I think 33 or
Wow.
34.
It's just unbelievable because that was always a huge issue, especially, for Republicans. They always at least talked about it, even though they were hypocrites and they always raised the debt
Right.
anyway.
Yeah.
But they at least talked about it. And then now it's just like, you know,
Dude, like Jackson, and I think someone got in an argument with me. They're like, "Oh, he was mean to the Native Americans." I know he was mean to the Native Americans, but putting that aside, dude, he hated the bank so much. And think, like, we were under the central banking. We were, I think, after the War of 1812, we were in something like $100 million of debt. And AJ comes in. He says, in the government at that point, they had like 30% like the government's deposit was all in central banking. He pulls it all. He says, "You're done." And he was able to pay off the debt and at a surplus of $50 million for the, like, that is amazing. 100 million then, I don't know what that is with inflation
wow.
today, but it's a lot, dude. It's in the,
Oh,
it
yeah.
might be a trillion. I don't know. I don't know what the, the exchange rate would be, but it was a
Wow.
shit ton of money. And he was able to pay all of it back and put a surplus, beating, like, he truly, that is an amazing character, dude, to be able to do that, to beat the Rothschilds, the Bank of England, to beat them back. It's like, it's unfathomable. I couldn't imagine. That's never going to happen,
No, no. And I think it was Charles Savoy, the Pilgrim Society guy, told me that
Yeah.
there were, I think, 2 attempts on Andrew Jackson's life while he was doing that, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, wow. And
He beat one with the cane so badly. The guy shot him. I think he might have hit him, and then he beat him with his cane like an inch from death.
that's great.
I know, dude. Like, that was
Uh,
men. That was awesome. Oh,
I mean, yeah, and everything revolves around money and debt, and it makes or breaks a country. And like I know there's a ton of quotes, at least by Thomas Jefferson about
mhm.
debt. I know there's others too about. I know that Washington warned about debt, and it's like we our representatives have done everything that the people who founded the country said don't do this,
Yeah, right.
and they did it immediately, like almost immediately. It's like they couldn't wait to do it. And it's like we were trying to do something different here,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, the debt, and like, over, I don't know when it began, probably in the late 1800s, but like this, they say that the 80s and the 90s were like the decades of decadence, and they were to a degree, but like everybody was marketed all these things. They just had to have them, and everybody wanted to keep up with the Joneses, as they say.
Mhm.
So if my neighbor gets this car, I got to have a nice car, or whatever it might be. And then technology started coming along, and people wanted all the technological gadgets. And then now, of course, you got to have the newest Apple phone every couple of
Right.
years. And so it's just like we have been conditioned to believe that we have to have all these things. And therefore, a lot of us who don't have as much money have to go in debt for these things. And we just believe it's normal. But that's not what our ancestors believed. They didn't
No.
think that you should go into debt like that, because when you're in debt like that, you have a noose over your head, basically.
Right. You do, dude. I just, and you can see, like, that Bank of England charter was so, it was the toppling stone. And I think that was passed like late 1600s. It allowed Britain to, wage limitless war against France, who wasn't under central banking. And you can see the allure to it. If you have a corrupt, or maybe even just, I saw an interesting like quote, or um, about Woodrow Wilson, how I always say he's like one of the most evil men in the world, but he was the author, the guy that wrote the central banking book. He suggests that Wilson was actually just like an idiot and didn't know banking, and thought, oh, well, all these smart people, kind of like what Eisenhower, he said he surrounded
Mhm.
himself with the smartest people in the room, which were the crooked, robber barons. But, and so he
Right.
believed him. He said, okay, yeah, like, that makes sense. And this way we won't have to, these, all these depressions and panics that we keep having, that were because of the bankers all through the 1800s when we didn't have the central bank. But it's just, it topples like, it's just so powerful, and nobody knows this. I don't know what they think. I guess they just don't think about the monetary system. Most people probably don't care.
They don't, it's like you try to talk to them about it, and it's no use usually to even try to have that conversation.
No. So off the central bit. So back to Ukraine. Let me pull up the other bookmark tweet I had, and I want you to explain, because I like know, all I know is Azov Battalion has swastikas. That's literally where my knowledge goes. I could find Ukraine on a map though, but I cannot. So this video, let me put. So it's today. So for people listening, it's a video of incendiary munitions being used at Azovstal, which I guess this is like a steel plant that a lot of the Azov Battalion, correct me if I'm wrong, anywhere, odd man, was like, I guess, hunkering down kind of. And it looks like they're dropping, someone suggested thermite, and it looks like a bunch of fireworks. So there was a joke that the media is going to play in reverse and say that the Azovs won and they were shooting off fireworks. But what does this mean? Can you explain this to me, odd man? Like, what's going on with what is Azovstal, and do you know what this is?
Well, I've kind of been out of the loop since I did the last show. I just had to take myself out of it because I was so engulfed with it. I was like, I'm never going to do another show about another subject if I don't just stop watching the news. But I believe it's probably, I think Azovstal is a place. I think that the Azov Battalion actually come from that area.
Okay.
And that may be the factory where, I know the news was saying for a while, at first they were saying it was just civilians hiding in this factory.
Yeah.
And then it came out, I think they even had video and pictures that no, the Azov Battalion are hiding there too. And so that finally the media had to admit that. So I'm wondering if that's the same factory. I bet it is.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah. Because I saw it was like a steel fortress or something like that. But I saw that also, like, so, and again, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, but Azov was important because they're like, I guess they must be very close to the Russian border. And they're like, they were the first line of defense that allowed the rest of Ukraine reinforcements to build up, while since they're a somewhat formidable force, they were able to hold off the Russians for a little bit.
I've heard such mixed messaging on that. They came about, from what I can tell, in 2014 during that whole overthrow of the government, where the Obama administration overthrew the government there. And so that's where they came, and they didn't have an army, a military at the time. So it was like a volunteer army of these Azov guys, or that's what they called themselves. And, that they were very adamant about how they hated, ethnic Russians, Jews, and others. And that was a huge part of what they did. And they ended up incorporating them into the military officially. I think the National Guard, their version of the National Guard in Ukraine. Okay. So they have their own military barracks. They have their own magazines they put out. They have Azov schools where they train. Wow. So it's a pretty big deal. They're very well funded, and you can see that they're well funded by their uniforms, their equipment, and we know that the Israelis have been funding or arming them for years now, because all these different organizations have asked them to stop, and they wouldn't. And of course, now we're arming them, and the CIA has been there training them for, I think, since at least 2014, 2015, from the reports I've seen. So
what explain that to me. Why is Israel is it like a fake war to have animosity with Russia? Like, why are they funding Nazi soldiers that are openly Nazis?
I think it probably just comes down to money, honestly. Okay. And I think they probably got the money from the West, and maybe from Soros types, to buy that equipment. And that's my opinion, though. There may be more to it. I'm sure more people out there know more than I do. Yeah. But it seems to me like the Israelis are in pretty damn good with the Russians. But they're in good with the Ukrainians too. They did I think it was 2020. They had a deal. It was like an open trade deal with Ukraine, but then they're doing businesses, or they're doing business with different Russian entities. They have a Vladimir Putin Street in Bethlehem.
No way.
Yes,
Do
yes,
they?
yeah. And in
Really?
fact, yeah.
Wow.
And I read an article from I think maybe 2019, or maybe a little bit later than that. But anyway, Putin went over there, and the Russians apparently funded this type of like a place for kids to go and like work out and get exercise, and just kind of a place for them to go after school. So Russia sponsored that. And so they've had other dealings. I know at one point RT News used RR to kind of what's the word, to get their the RR Satellite is a company owned by Israel, an
Okay.
Israeli company. So that's how they were getting their station out to everyone,
Interesting.
transmitting it. Excuse me, I couldn't
No
think of the
way,
right word.
dude.
Yeah. Now I don't know if they still use RR Sat, but they were. And
That
so
is crazy.
yeah, then there's other businesses there too that I can't think of the names off the top of my head, but so they've had a pretty good. And that's one of the things I thought was interesting, because if we went by what we're told over here, Russia hates Israel, and
Right.
Iran and Russia are going to get Israel. It's like, I don't think that Russia is going to do that. Like Business Insider even had an article, right, like maybe 2 weeks into this whole Russia Ukraine war, and it said like it was like 8 large planes come into Israel with Russian military, or not Russian military,
Billionaires. Yeah.
billionaires. Yeah, so they have they'll do business with whoever. Both countries, I don't think they care. And I think Ukraine will take anybody's money, because they were in the not the Panama Papers, but the other one, the
Oh, the
Pandora
Pandora.
Papers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so they had more oligarchs and guys implicated, government guys from Ukraine implicated in that, than any other country. So you know I think they've had so many of these guys who probably, it's kind of like organized crime. I think a lot of
Mm.
this money's been funneled in there. It's untraceable a lot of times. And no matter what they do, it's like the U.S. just thinks they can throw money at everything, you
Yeah.
know, and fix it. And these guys just take the money and run, and do whatever. And they're probably doing all kinds of horrible things with it, And it's been happening there for several decades at least,
Well,
So
dude, so this was and I'm going to show this art. So I think Ukraine is the third or fourth largest producer of wheat. But so the news on the weekend was how India banned wheat exports with immediate effect. They're the number 3 largest producer of wheat. It goes America, Russia, India, Ukraine. Maybe I'm wrong on that. And then they also are one of the largest producers of rice. But I just find this all interesting that, so for anyone listening, the tweet is India banned wheat exports with immediate effect. The world was counting on its supply to alleviate the constraints by the war in Ukraine. So Ukraine is a normally huge producer of wheat. This war is obviously affecting that production. And now India bans their wheat exports. I wonder what your take is. Is all of this, they often do kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Is this a grand scheme to produce a food shortage in the world? What do you think
you know,
about that?
well, when I went into this first, I just kept finding so much out about Ukraine, and how the West had been like pushing all this money into it and supporting all these different anti-Russian guys for their government and stuff like that. And I was totally like, well, this is just a Western thing where they just don't want Russia to have Ukraine, because it's like Zbigniew Brzezinski said years ago. He said, without Ukraine, Russia can't be an empire. And I think that the West, they wanted Russia to be a part of the whole Great Reset, New World Order, but I think they didn't want Russia to have a big part in it. And I think Putin maybe was like, well, no, we want a bigger part. And I think that was the animosity, or that was what I was thinking.
Mm.
But the more I look into it, it just seems like, when these things happen, the timing of them, and what happens because of them, not just the war itself, but all these different policies and everything you're talking about right now with the wheat and the different supply shortages. I have to wonder, dude, because it's happening almost at a perfect time after the whole COVID thing and how everybody, all these businesses have been decimated and everybody is like beat down mentally. And I just have to think it's very suspicious. And also, this week's show is coming out is about Russia. And I kind of looked at how they were kind of on board with the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, Sustainable Development, Agenda 21, 2030, and all that. And I tried to take a deeper dive into it because a lot of people in the alt media are just saying, no, Russia's good, Putin's, and they're
Fighting
not
the deep
looking.
state.
Yeah, and like you're a conspiracy theorist if you think anything else. I've heard people outright say that, and I'm like, well, if this country that you didn't like, you were suspicious of, was a part of WEF, was a part of Agenda 21 and all that stuff, you would be like, you'd be all over it.
Yeah.
So you're just ignoring that because you like them. So it's just a simple thing. You're just, being biased. It's an emotional thing. So I'm really starting to wonder, man, if this is all happening for a strategic reason, to bring everybody into the Great Reset and the New World Order and the Agenda 21 and all that, because it seems to me like that's what's happening.
Yeah. It's just, and again, there's hindsight. We always can see a few, like with 9/11, there's like 10 different reasons why it worked great. Larry Silverstein to getting an endless war in the Middle East and get opium production up and get more bases and all this military. So there's always, a few birds they're hitting with the stone, but this food shortage, like, people, no one's talking about it because they don't want people to panic. And, Roe versus Wade, as they hold signs, keep your laws out of my pussy or whatever lovely phrases they use. That's stealing the attention when I think that there's something serious, America. I was a beautiful graph, but I should have saved it, but it showed the world of who imports for their food and who exports their surplus. And America exports about 22% of our surplus, of like 22% of our total production, which is surplus. Britain imports everything. Africa imports everything. You would think Africa would have great farming, dude. They import all of Africa. Maybe North Africa, there's an exception. They would die without the importing of food, which is mind-blowing. That's a whole continent that can't grow food for itself. So these food shortages, I had like a tweet, it's not going to, it's going to cause our prices to go up $23 a pound for a ribeye steak. Insane. But our prices are just going to go up. But there is something seriously going to happen in the third world, in Africa, in South America. Brazil and one other is the only ones that have enough to export their surplus. They're going to run out of food, dude. Where they're coming to America, Europe, and so I think that's my guess is that they're doing, like how you just said, that was a great idea about bringing everyone into the Great Reset. That would be a great way to do it if you starve the third world.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And, I've talked about this a few times, but I ran across this quote by Karl Marx, and it was his one enemy theory. And he's basically said that you have to have a clear enemy who seems like the epitome of evil. And then the other side has to look like the example of everything that's good. And
who said that? Sorry.
Karl Marx.
Wow. Well, that was very smart, poetic.
And this was pre-World War I. So, World War II, excuse me. So, like, boom, then you get Hitler, and that was like perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
And so every guy who they think is a little bit bad gets compared, right? He is, so, that's what they're doing to Putin, right?
Yeah.
And, Biden makes sure to call it Putin's war. And, all the people in the media are like, this crazy Putin, it's like, they make him sound just totally insane. And it's like, it really seems like that's the way they're going. Like, if it is a strategy, that's the strategy they're using. And it's working like a charm. And, it's got everybody so divided. And I don't know, man, the timing just to me is just it's almost too much to say there's not something else going on.
Yeah. I think they call, go ahead. Good.
Because why? Because if you think about it, this whole thing has been going on for a long time, and maybe it was because Zelensky was like talking about being a part of NATO, and maybe somebody said that Zelensky even talked about getting nukes in the press, which would probably never happen. But maybe that was what pushed Putin. But that this whole thing has been going back and forth for a long time, and it's like, why now? And then the question I have is, what does he stand to gain? What does the Russian government stand to gain? Because now they're the enemy of NATO, the most powerful force in the world. And now NATO is getting these other countries to come on to NATO. Russia
Dude.
loses. It's a big lose-lose for Russia.
Right.
So, and they're demonized by all the Western media.
Yes.
So I don't think Putin's that stupid. This guy is a former KGB agent. I
Yeah,
don't think he's that
absolutely.
stupid.
Well, it's just because you said about bringing the man, we're sometimes, dude, we are on the same wavelength, odd man.
I love
But
it.
right as you were talking about that, I was pulling up this article, The Hidden City Under Helsinki. It's a Finnish city that can hold 600,000 people, that was built after World War II. And that's because they didn't join NATO. So they built this back then. 900,000 people, excuse me, a third of more than the city's population. It's got, for people just listening, this is a softball court. They have go-karts. They have stairs. They have a carport, so everyone can park their car and not block the door. This has nothing to do with the Great Reset, but I just found that amazing that Finland was so, back probably when there was honest politicians and they were actually worried, they built this beautiful structure. Did you see this article or no?
No, I didn't. But this reminds me, I can't remember the name of the movie. It was like 3 years old, and it was I can't remember the guy's name. I think he was the guy that was in Gladiator, maybe. Australian guy, and then it was the girl who plays. She was Deadpool's girlfriend who died. That was his wife, and apparently this apocalyptic, like all this stuff started happening. Like these, I think it was like a comet was coming to destroy the Earth or whatever, and they were all running and they got separated. But anyway, at the end, the man, the woman, and their child got on a plane and they went to Greenland, and they had an underground bunker.
No way.
So, yeah.
Dude, I mean, archery, volley, but I wonder, that would be a great move too if you're trying to get, your one world government using Russia, like I think you just said, and I'm just repeating you, but you force, or it looks like you're like forced. Russia's so bad, it's forcing these neutral countries into the NATO, into all these other globalized organizations. Just like we said, there's so many
Yeah.
birds with one stone. This is becoming a successful whatever it is.
Yeah, and if it is that, they'll probably eventually either kill Putin or pretend like he's dead and he'll disappear forever. He'll probably go down to Argentina or wherever.
Yeah, he's probably hanging out with Hitler in Argentina.
Just live happily ever after, because it's a perfect plan, really. I mean, have the whole world mad at this one guy, because they're going to blame everything on this. They already are.
Oh yeah,
and they were doing it before it even happened.
right.
They're basically warning us. Well, we're going to run out of gas. We're going to have to suffer. Like Biden was talking about us suffering, and it's like, dude, nothing's even happened yet.
Yeah, and they're going to use that with the food short, because I don't think people
Definitely.
like it's come. And a oil billionaire in New York, can't remember his name. He had a quote like 2 days ago. He said, "Diesel fuel on the East Coast will be rationed during summer." I mean,
Wow.
I don't mean to scare people. Like, you should prepare now, though. But there is going to be prices are going to be insane, and I eat a lot of meat, so this is going to shoot me in the foot. But yeah, like it's going to go up, or you're going to go without, because they're going to blame Russia. They're going to blame whatever they can. It's definitely not their fault. But yeah, it's coming, dude. It is coming.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I'm hearing people or seeing people online, talking about shortage of, they can't get eggs, they can't get, hamburger meat. One guy told me that a pound of hamburger meat was $12.50 at his grocery store, just like crazy stuff like that. And I've noticed the last couple of times I went to the grocery store, there are some spots where are almost completely empty. So I don't know what the deal is, but I assume it has something to do with that. And yeah, I think the average person is not prepared whatsoever. And we've been trying to get prepared the last couple of years, and I
Yeah.
think that we could hold out for a little while. But I think the average people don't have a plan whatsoever. They don't think it can ever happen here.
No, no. And that's what, again, this is like, I'm not a big Great Reset. Like, I didn't research the Great Reset a lot, or I know what the premise is, but this is how you truly take over and make moves. It's like that final push. You have a food shortage, you have mass immigration, you have massive amounts of crime. People are begging for a sense of normalcy to return. And that's how you institute a police state, a totally surveillance state, even more than it already is. You
Yeah,
institute, a one world government. And I mean, you're on your, like, we are just those few steps away from, that kind of crazy change.
I know, and it's like with everything that's happened, I'm gonna really feel bad for people. But if they try to come here and take my food, I'm gonna pow pow. But like,
No,
I feel
Jesus was a socialist and a communist, odd man, if you didn't know. That's what non-Christians tell me.
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like you try to warn these people, and they act like you're insane. But just something is simple as get a huge bag of rice, like a
Yeah.
15-pound bag of rice or beans or something, and some extra water, some things that you'll have. So if the shit hits the fan, you will at least be able to stay alive until maybe
Right.
you can get to a better point.
Until the FEMA camps come, then you'll be all
Yeah,
right. But also
exactly.
you should get, like, tradable things. Not that, because I know we're
Yeah.
not all flush with, but like alcohol, cigarettes,
Yes.
coffee, people
Yeah.
will always trade for, because they're commodities that you people will do whatever to get a cigarette, or do whatever to get alcohol and all that. If you can get hard drugs and store those, that's a
Oh
good
yeah.
idea too, people.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
joking. I don't know if that's allowed to say on YouTube, but yeah,
You'd be the king in there in no
you
time
could.
flat.
You could be like Pablo Escobar in the end times. So if you guys got to connect to maybe cartels, mafia, pick up as much as you can. I guarantee you're going to get a great investment on that. Great return
Dude,
investment.
I'm not even kidding. I'm thinking about learning to make moonshine because, there used to be a
Yes.
big thing around this area, and now nobody, does it because they don't have to. But man,
Yeah,
it's
you
supposed to be pretty
absolutely
simple.
should.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah, dude. If those no, I'm joking. If those hillbillies can do it, you can
Right.
do it, dude.
Not for real. I mean, you're right though, man. That would be something that's gonna people will barter for that, and they'll always want those type of things.
Yeah, absolutely, dude.
Make bullets. Get you something that you can make press the bullets.
Yeah, that's
Oh
another huge
man,
one.
yeah.
Basically live like those people if you guys ever watched Life Below Zero in Alaska, that's how we need to be training. Like those. Do you ever watch that show?
No, no.
Oh, dude, you would love it's awesome. They're real men, like Josh in the chat. Real men stuff, like building a cabin, you don't need a permit. Building a water wheel to catch salmon, no permits needed, buddy. You just build it, They're amazing,
Nice.
those
That's the way it
people.
should be.
Yes, dude, absolutely. But I had a lot of, so where can everyone find you? All those, or any last comments first, and then where can people find you?
Oh, just that. Thank you very much for having me, man. It's always a blast. You can find me at theoddmanout.podbean.com. Also, you can check me out at alternatecurrentradio.com. I'm on there. I do a show on there called Boiler Room on Thursdays. They got a bunch of shows. And then if you want to find me on social media, usually it's Twitter and Instagram, and that's _ the odd man out.
Nice, dude. Well, I appreciate you always come on here. And so, guys, I hope you enjoyed the stream. I thought it went pretty well. How about you? I think we
Yeah,
were.
man. I stumbled there at first. I don't know, man. I didn't have my thinking cap on, but yeah, I thought the second half was fantastic.
Oh, no, dude. The whole thing was good. So, thanks for listening, everybody. Tomorrow, I got Don Jeffries on. And then Wednesday, we'll finish central banking. Russia is the focus, Imperial Russia. But thanks for coming, everybody that was here. David, we'll see you next. Send me an email or send me a message on Twitter because I need your skills. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon. Bye.